one of the elements of design is line, and I really enjoy working with line just because it creates an emotion within your design, and I find it very compelling to have some fun with line movements and things. Line is defined as the visual path that your eye goes through when it's following through the design. And so I wanted to talk a little about one particular line movement that I really think is fun and that we can work with in our designing is implied line. Now, implied line is kind of creating an imaginary or an invisible line. If you're using different components like elements in your design to create it, there's that magic line in between that really isn't there that you see. So I wanted to kind of show you how that is done. I'm going to be using some forsythia. And of course you want to find that line movement that works really well. That gives us kind of that curvilinear, because I wanted to kind of connect. So I've got a cube and some floral foam. And I've got some branches that we'll use that kind of follow that line movement to give us that compelling line, that imaginary line that we want to use. That one's a little bit too crooked. The other direction. So we want to connect these. So I have this line movement coming up. And basically what we're doing is framing. So that framing comes up and brings our eye back down to the focal area. So let me get that line movement started. And sometimes we have to manipulate a little bit to get it to do what we want it to do. And that's kind of massaging your design to be able to do that. And you can do that with many different types of branches or products that will do that. And we're also kind of doing that shadowing technique where we have a taller one and another one that's shadowing right behind that. That creates a lot of depth in your design and it makes it really fun. So we want that line movement to come up. I want you to kind of curve just a little bit more. I do have some eucalyptus that I'll be able to work with that to get that. I kind of massage it a little bit so it gives me that line movement that I want. And follow it through. So we're going to keep moving into that, forming that line that you can see. You can see it kind of coming up and around, kind of developing that form that we want. And it gives us that imaginary connection throughout the design. Again, bringing it up and around. So we want to keep adding to this. I'm going to come out to the sides with some eucalyptus. And my rule of thumb always is, if you put it on one side, always put it on the opposite side. What does that do? That gives us 4 balances. Physical balance, visual balance, color balance, and textural balance. All by doing that. Those couple placements. And to me that is amazing that you're able to work with that in your design. So our lines are forming. Let's come back with a little bit more eucalyptus. There we go. And I want to add just a little bit more forsythia to follow that yellow. Pulling the yellow from the container. Again, that's a little bit of color balance all the way through from one side to the other. And we're able to bring that up. As you can see, that line movement is coming up and around. So we're following that all the way through. So I also want to come back and do some basing right down to the very center, because framing, what it does is it brings your eye right down to your focal area. So we're going to use some peach carnations, and I'm just going to cut them fairly short because we're going to do a basing. This is pave, which is straight across the top. And basically everything is at the same dimension. Coming across and creating our line movement. It brings our eye right down to our focal area. I also want to enhance the line movements that we created with some tulips. So we'll bring some tulips in to follow the line movement. Tulips are great with this. Now again, tomorrow they're going to be a little bit different because they're tropic. They're going to grow towards the light. And they're going to change a little bit, but that's okay. Let them do it naturally in the design. But you can see that they will help develop our line movement just because of the curvilinear line that they have. bring it around. And they're very easy to massage and manipulate so they come up around. Here, like so. So you can see we've got that line movement established, and it looks like it connects at the very top. Do a little bit of foliage down at the very bottom just to finish off our basing so we don't see our foam. You can see how fast, anytime you're doing a line design, it seems to me you can design faster. Just because there's less insertions, you get a lot of perceived value with the volume that you can. And we often see that this is done also with premium product. It is the premier and not just pedestrian products that we see when we're designing. So looking at the line movements that we create, you can see that our eye comes up and around, and we've got this imaginary line right in between that our mind's eye actually brings it in, and it looks like it's going to connect. And we follow that through, and then we go right down to our focal area. So when we're looking at implied line, it's your mind is kind of just establishing just that visibility. It's just kind of making that connection, even though it's really not there. And that's what makes it comfortable to look at. And it also just kind of gives us that definition of importance in our feature, that this is a line design and that it's coming up and around and bringing us down to the focal area. So have fun with it. Implied line, I think, is a really great design element to use when you're creating some beautiful spring designs.